For decades, Tombstone has stood as one of the most beloved and endlessly quoted westerns ever made. Its unforgettable cast, iconic mustaches, and legendary gunfights have secured its place in movie history. But beneath the surface of this classic lies a remarkable secret, one that most viewers have never discovered. Surprisingly, the person who understood that secret better than anyone wasn't Kurt Russell or Val Kilmer. It was Sam Elliott, the unmistakable voice behind Virgil Earp. Elliott witnessed firsthand what was really happening behind the cameras during the making of Tombstone. He knew who was truly shaping the film, who was making the difficult decisions, and why the finished movie became so different from what it was originally meant to be. Once you understand what Sam Elliott was fighting to protect, you'll never look at Tombstone in quite the same way again. Before exploring Elliott's role in this hidden story, it's important to understand just how close Tombstone came to falling apart before audiences ever saw it. By the early 1990s, Hollywood had largely abandoned the Western. The genre that had once dominated theaters was widely viewed as outdated, with studios believing audiences had moved on. Then came Kevin Jarre, the acclaimed screenwriter behind the Oscar-winning Civil War drama Glory. Jarre wasn't interested in making another ordinary Western. He wanted to create the definitive story of Wyatt Earp and the legendary events in Tombstone. His screenplay was unlike anything Hollywood had seen in years. Rich with historical detail, layered characters, and sweeping emotion, it attracted an astonishing collection of talent. Kurt Russell signed on as Wyatt Earp. Val Kilmer would become the unforgettable Doc Holliday. Sam Elliott took the role of Virgil Earp, while Bill Paxton played Morgan. Joining them were Powers Booth, Michael Biehn, Stephen Lang, Billy Bob Thornton, and legendary actor Robert Mitchum as the film's narrator. What many fans don't realize is that Jarre wasn't hired only to write the screenplay. He was also chosen to direct the film, making Tombstone his first feature as a director. From the beginning, Jarre was obsessed with authenticity. Every detail mattered to him. He insisted the actors grow genuine 19th-century mustaches, carefully styled to match the fashion of the 1880s, complete with waxed and curled tips. That may sound like a minor detail, but to the cast it became a symbol of their commitment. They proudly wore those mustaches as proof that they were creating something special. Jarre's dedication to historical accuracy inspired confidence throughout the production. The actors believed they weren't simply making another Western. They believed they were making the greatest Western ever put on film. Unfortunately, reality proved far more difficult than anyone expected. While Jarre was an exceptional writer, directing a massive historical production filled with horses, elaborate gunfights, period costumes, crowded streets, and dozens of major actors demanded an entirely different skill set. The production quickly began slipping behind schedule. Reports from the set suggested Jarre wanted every scene to resemble the grand visual style of legendary filmmaker John Ford, carefully crafting wide cinematic compositions. The problem was that such perfection required time the production simply didn't have. Day after day, filming fell further behind. Only about a month after cameras started rolling, producer Andy Vajna made the difficult decision to remove Kevin Jarre as director. At that moment, Tombstone seemed doomed. The cast had lost the filmmaker who had convinced them to join the project. The crew was divided, a significant portion of the movie remained unfinished, and the schedule was rapidly collapsing. Under those circumstances, many productions never recover. Yet somehow, Tombstone survived. What happened next became one of Hollywood's best-kept behind-the-scenes secrets, and Sam Elliott stood at the center of it all. After Jarre's dismissal, the studio hired veteran director George P. Cosmatos, known for action films such as Rambo, First Blood Part 2, and Cobra. Officially, Cosmatos became the director of Tombstone, and for years that was the story everyone accepted. According to the credits, George P. Cosmatos directed the film. But decades later, an entirely different version of events emerged. In an interview with True West magazine, Kurt Russell revealed that he had quietly taken control of the production after Jarre's departure. Russell explained that he had personally secured approximately $25 million in financing from producer Andy Vajna and had invested his own reputation in making the project succeed. When the original director was fired, the producers wanted Russell to officially replace him. Russell declined. He had no desire to receive directing credit or become publicly known as the filmmaker behind Tombstone. Instead, he proposed an unusual arrangement. George P. Cosmatos would serve as the film's official director, while Russell would privately oversee the creative direction behind the scenes. According to Russell, every evening he prepared a detailed shot list for the following day's filming. He would meet privately with Cosmatos, hand over the schedule, explain exactly how each sequence should be filmed, and then allow Cosmatos to direct those scenes on set the next morning. Russell also made a personal promise. As long as George P. Cosmatos was alive, he would never reveal the arrangement to anyone. He honored that commitment for years. Only after Cosmatos passed away in 2005 did Russell finally tell the story publicly in 2006. Interestingly, Russell said the idea of hiring Cosmatos came from Sylvester Stallone himself. That revelation completely changed the way many people viewed the making of Tombstone. It also helps explain why Sam Elliott's role in the production became so significant. Once Kurt Russell effectively became the creative force behind the film, major changes to Kevin Jarre's screenplay began almost immediately. Every actor faced the same difficult choice: accept the revisions or fight to preserve the original vision. Most of the cast accepted the changes. One actor refused. And that decision would become one of the most fascinating and least understood stories behind one of the greatest westerns ever made. When Kurt Russell quietly assumed creative control of Tombstone, he was forced to make a choice that would shape the movie forever. It was a decision born out of necessity, but one that Sam Elliott never fully accepted. Russell understood the reality facing the production. Kevin Jarre's original screenplay was ambitious, sprawling, and packed with historical detail. It wasn't just a western, it was an epic. But after the delays, the firing of the original director, and the shrinking schedule, filming the entire script simply wasn't possible. If the movie was going to survive, something had to give. So Russell and producer James Jacks began making painful cuts. Nearly 30 pages disappeared from the screenplay. Entire storylines were removed before they could be filmed. Supporting characters who once had meaningful arcs suddenly found themselves with only a handful of scenes. Performers like Billy Zane and Jason Priestley saw much of their material vanish, while major historical moments, including the famous Earp Vendetta ride, were condensed into brief sequences that moved the story forward as quickly as possible. Russell wasn't making these changes at random. He had a very specific goal in mind. He believed the emotional heart of Tombstone wasn't the gunfights or the history. It was the friendship between Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday. Everything else, in his view, needed to support that relationship. Years later, Russell described their bond as one of cinema's greatest love stories between two men, not romantic, but built on absolute loyalty, mutual respect, and a willingness to die for one another. To strengthen that central relationship, everything else had to become smaller. What's often overlooked is that Russell didn't protect himself during this process. Despite being the film's biggest star, he repeatedly asked for his own dialogue to be reduced. According to accounts from the production, he encouraged Kevin Jarre to give Wyatt Earp's lines to other characters whenever possible. He insisted Tombstone shouldn't become the Kurt Russell show. Instead, he wanted every major character to have memorable moments. Val Kilmer reportedly embraced the same attitude. According to Russell, Kilmer jokingly said they could remove every one of Doc Holliday's lines if necessary because he was confident he'd still steal every scene with nothing more than a small cup in his hand and the way he carried himself on screen. One by one, the actors accepted the sacrifices. Powers Booth, Bill Paxton, Michael Biehn, and the rest of the ensemble watched their screen time shrink as the production raced against time and budget. Everyone understood that compromise was the only way to finish the movie. Everyone except Sam Elliott. Unlike the others, Elliott refused to quietly watch Kevin Jarre's screenplay be dismantled. He believed something far more important than screen time was being lost. He believed the soul of the movie was disappearing. Sam Elliott wasn't known for causing trouble on movie sets. His reputation was built on professionalism, quiet confidence, and an unwavering respect for great storytelling. But during the making of Tombstone, even he reached a breaking point. Playing Virgil Earp meant more to Elliott than simply wearing a badge or delivering tough dialogue. Virgil represented the moral backbone of the Earp family, the older brother whose sense of justice ultimately pushed the others toward the confrontation that changed American history. Elliott understood that Virgil wasn't supposed to be flashy. His strength came from his quiet authority, his integrity, and the subtle moments that revealed the man beneath the lawman. Those were exactly the scenes that kept disappearing. According to stories that emerged after production, While the rest of the cast accepted dialogue cuts with little resistance, Elliott drew a line no one dared cross. His warning became legendary. "If you cut one word of my dialogue," he reportedly said, "I'll kill you." Most people have always treated the remark as classic Sam Elliott humor, a gruff joke delivered with a straight face. But beneath the laughter was a genuine frustration. He wasn't protecting his ego. He was protecting the story. Unlike many actors, Elliott had fallen in love with Kevin Jarre's screenplay long before cameras ever started rolling. He believed it was one of the finest scripts he had ever read, not simply because of its action, but because of its patience. Jarre's version allowed every major character to breathe. Relationships developed naturally. Quiet conversations carried as much weight as gunfights. Every emotional payoff was earned. When those pages disappeared, Elliott believed the emotional foundation disappeared with them. He spoke openly about that disappointment after the film's release. In a 1993 interview with Entertainment Weekly, Elliott described Jarre's original screenplay as one of the best scripts he'd ever been given. Then he made a remarkable confession. Had he been offered only the shortened version that ultimately became the finished movie, he likely would have turned the role down altogether. That statement shocked many fans. After all, Elliott's portrayal of Virgil Earp remains one of the most respected performances in the film. Yet even he believed audiences had seen only part of what the character was originally meant to become. According to Elliott, nearly 30 pages of material had been removed, pages that connected scenes together, deepened relationships, and gave every character richer emotional lives. He often referred to those missing scenes as the film's connective tissue, the material that transformed an exciting Western into a sweeping historical drama. Virgil Earp suffered more than most. In Jarre's original screenplay, Virgil stood at the emotional center of the family. His unwavering commitment to justice inspired Wyatt and Morgan to finally put on their badges and confront the cowboys. Numerous quieter scenes explored his leadership, his compassion, and the burden he carried as the oldest brother. Many of those moments never reached the screen. As the editing continued, Virgil gradually shifted from a fully developed central figure into more of a supporting character. Elliott understood why it happened. The production was fighting for survival, but that didn't make accepting the changes any easier. Looking back today, the conflict between Kurt Russell and Sam Elliott reveals something fascinating. Neither man was wrong. Russell believed cutting the script was the only way to save Tombstone. Without those painful decisions, the film might never have been completed. Elliott believed preserving Jarre's original screenplay would have created an even greater masterpiece. Both perspectives came from a deep love for the project. Ironically, that creative struggle may be one of the reasons Tombstone remains so powerful more than 30 years later. Beneath every memorable gunfight, every unforgettable one-liner, and every legendary performance lies an invisible battle between two visions of the same story, one fighting to survive, and the other fighting to become something even greater.